Hello everybody! Today we are going to make my Instant Pot pork carnitas. These carnitas are so full of flavor, they're really easy to make, and you will just love the results. I like to eat them in a tortilla, or you can have them over grits or mashed potatoes or anything like that. They are so good. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I did is I have a good sized mixing bowl here, and I have 2 tablespoons of olive oil. We're going to season the meat first, and now I'm going to put in some spices. So what I have in here is a teaspoon of salt, a half a teaspoon of pepper, a teaspoon of oregano, 2 teaspoons of cumin, 2 teaspoons of chili powder, a half a teaspoon of paprika, a teaspoon of garlic, a teaspoon of adobo, and a 1/4 teaspoon of coriander. And the reason why I rattled all that off is I had some comments from some of you guys that asked if I could please mention the amounts and the ingredients I'm putting in here. Just so you know, down in the description of the video, I do provide a link to the recipe on my blog, and the recipe does have a print button, and it also has a little picture so that you can print it out if you want to and have the picture with the recipe. Okay, so onward. I've got all those spices, and I'm going to put them in the oil and then just stir them up really well to get them all incorporated with the oil. And then the nice thing about this is when you put the meat in here to coat the meat, this will make sure that there's an even distribution of all the different flavors of spices in here. Okay, and so next we're going to put the meat in. If you find that you would like this a little bit looser, you can always adjust the olive oil. You can add just like a little bit more. It's kind of pasty because it's almost like a rub, but feel free to add a little bit more if you want to. I think this is pretty good right here. Also today I'm using just about 2 pounds of pork shoulder. Normally I would make this recipe with 3 pounds, but I only had 2 pounds, and you know, you just use what you've got, right? So we'll go ahead and do the meat now. Okay, so in goes the meat. Now I've cut this pork up into pretty good sized chunks, not too big, just because I want to make sure they all get coated with the spices, and this will ensure that they cook really evenly and get nice and tender. So I'm going to mix this up and make sure that all the pieces get well coated with the spice mixture. Okay, as you can see, the meat is really well coated, so we'll just set that aside for just a moment. And over here at the Instant Pot, I was going to turn on the saute button, but I think I'm just going to do it from cold. So this is 1 full cup of orange juice, and a cinnamon stick. And this is about, I don't know, maybe 3 inches or so. And you want to make sure that it's a pretty fresh cinnamon stick. You know how sometimes you have these in your pantry and they've been there for like 5 years and they just don't smell fresh. I think that you get better results when you have a fresher one. If your cinnamon sticks are old, maybe just put in a bigger chunk, and that just goes in there. And I have 1 yellow onion that I have chopped up going in. Okay, and then I can't do this with one hand, but I'm going to go ahead and add the pork in as well. All right, the pork is in and looking pretty good in there. The next thing that we want to do is just give it a stir, not too much because you don't want to stir all of the you know, spice and everything off of there, but just to incorporate it a little bit. So I didn't give it much of a stir, just a little bit. And the next thing that we want to do is put the lid on and make sure the ring is in there really well. One note, this is a very fragrant dish, so you might want to use one of your silicone rings that you use for the more aromatic foods. Okay, push it down, set your knob to sealing. I made a batch of applesauce the other day, and forgot to change my ring. And my applesauce kind of tasted like spicy meat. So I keep a ring for my sweet things like that, and I keep another ring for foods like this. I actually have several rings. I will say that you know, you wash it really well. Store your lid upside down so that the silicone is always exposed to the air, and that helps quite a bit. Okay, so to cook this, we just want to hit the meat stew button and then use the plus or the minus to adjust the time in minutes. Make sure it's on high pressure, which the meat setting will default to that. And then I'm going to cook these for 35 minutes. And then after they're done cooking, we'll do about a 10 to 15 minute natural pressure release. Okay, so it's been naturally releasing for about 16 minutes now. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off and release the remaining pressure that's in there. Shouldn't be too much. All the pressure is out. Woo! Steam bath. Okay, oh my goodness, that smells so good. It looks good too. Alright, so at this point what I like to do is use a slotted spoon and scoop out the meat, and I'm going to put it all in a bowl. Now at this point we want to get rid of that cinnamon stick. You see how it uncurled? So I'll just set that aside. And look at how tender that meat is. I mean, it just shreds really beautifully. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I usually use 2 forks, so I'm going to set the camera down and do that and just give it a nice shred. The meat is all shredded and it looks really good, and it's actually pretty moist. You can see a little bit of juices down in there, and at this point, you know, you'd be good to go. You could start making your tacos and, you know, whatever you're going to do with the meat. I just wanted to give you another idea here. So there's still quite a bit of liquid down in the pot. I don't know if you can see, but there's also a nice layer of fat on top. I'm not opposed to some fat, but this is a little bit more than I want to just, you know, ingest. So what I'm going to do is just pour it into one of these fat separators, and then this just filters out or strains out some of the onion or whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and get that filled up, and then I'll show you the rest. So here's a tip. Maybe it's just me, but for the longest time I couldn't figure out what this little rubber thingy was for in the fat separator. I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, but what the heck. So I've used a fat separator for years, but I just never knew what this was for. And then one day I saw somebody use one on a cooking show, and you probably already know this, but for those of you who, like me, may not have known this, keep this plug in there when you fill up the fat separator with the drippings, and then it'll keep any of the actual fat from going up the spout. And you know, the spout's down on the bottom because obviously oil floats, right? So then when you pull this out, I don't know if I can do it with one hand or not. Oh, yes I can. There. So now you can just pour some of the liquid if you want to. This is optional, but pour some of the liquid back in with your carnitas. This gives back a little bit of the flavor, because there's a lot of flavor in that liquid. You know, it has the orange juice and spices and stuff. And then this keeps the meat super moist too. But if you like it drier, you know, by all means, just shred it and go. I like it like this. I like it really juicy, and I love all that flavor in there. And one really neat idea is you could put this liquid back in the Instant Pot. You could make some rice with it. You could make a gravy with it. Or, well, you could just discard it if you want. There's no shame in that. But I actually really love making rice with it. So I'm going to actually do that. So if you want to continue watching, I'm just going to pour this back in here, but without all the grease. And then I'll get some rice and show you how I do that. Okay, I've got the rice all ready to go, and what I did is I just put it in a strainer and ran this under the water for a little bit because I like to rinse it really well before I make rice. If you ever have a problem in the Instant Pot with a really sticky rice, maybe, and you don't want sticky rice, try rinsing it first and see if taking off some of the starch makes a difference for you. So this is the rice cup that came with the Instant Pot, and I just put in 2 of those because it looks like here, I don't know if you can see that, but it looks like we've got just about almost 2 Instant Pot cups. Instant Pot cups aren't the same as regular cups. I think when I put liquid in here one time into an empty liner, it took 3 8-ounce cups to get up to that 2 mark. So when I normally make rice in the Instant Pot, I'll put, these are 6 ounces anyway, and I'll put 2 of these in, and then I'll just add water until it gets to the 2, and that's how you measure it, and that's how you do it in a rice cooker too. If you want more information on that, look at my perfect jasmine rice video, and I explain and show you how that's done. Anyway, I'm kind of guessing because normally I put the rice in first, but because the liquid's already in there, I probably could have done that. I probably could have put the rice in first and then poured the liquid into the 2, but I was just too excited. So it's going in. I mean, it's not the end of the world if it isn't perfect. It'll be good no matter what. If I have to add a little bit more rice, that's okay. All right, so it looks pretty good. It's a little bit more watery from when I normally do rice, so I might just add just a tiny bit more unrinsed, and that's okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. So because this is jasmine rice just happens to be what I had on hand. And when I cook that, I just use my manual setting, and I do 4 minutes. And then I just do about a 10-minute, 9-minute natural release and fluff it with a fork, and I'm good to go. Okay, the moment of truth. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna just get a fork and kind of fluff it up. Yeah, that looks great. And it's going to taste really good with all that spice and juice from the meat and from the orange juice as well. So there you have it. That was a complete meal. Now you can put your carnitas on this rice. Just choose to have your rice on the side, or you can build, like I said before, you can get tortillas and make a nice taco or whatever you want. I hope you've enjoyed this video on how to make carnitas. I know sometimes it just helps to have that visual to accompany a written recipe. So my website is simplyhappyfoodie.com. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.